Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're going to be playing the new Momentum seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which whenever a unit gets boosted, it will also gain Vitality. Whenever it gets damaged, it will gain Bleeding. Now, important distinction, this only applies for any boosting and damaging that units do. Special cards and leader abilities will not trigger this effect, so save your spells for another day. And today we're going to be trying out a deck that does a nice combination of boosting a lot of units and damaging a lot of units, so we will see a lot of momentum taking effect. No wonder they named the event after it. Okay, so today we're going to use a Scoia'tael Guerilla Tactics movement deck, and the objective of this deck is to maximize the number of units that we either boost or deal damage to, rather than dealing a ton of damage or doing a ton of boosts to one single unit. The reason for that being, for example, it's a lot quicker and easier to get the full benefit out of 6 units having 1 Vitality rather than 1 unit having 6 Vitality, and same story for Bleed. So with that being said, this is a relatively standard Scoia'tael movement deck because that deck already has so much boosting and damaging built in whenever we move our cards or our opponent's cards, with a few minor adjustments for this seasonal event. So I'll flip through the deck to show you what it looks like. And Gezras is, of course, the quintessential card in this deck, so boosting as many units as possible in our range row, damaging as many units as possible in our opponent's melee row. This card basically encapsulates everything that we're trying to do with this deck. Yrden to reset a row, Heatwave for outright removal, play a unit of our choice with Royal Decree. Pavko is one of our non-movement cards, but because he can deal damage every turn, this is great for maximizing the number of units that have bleeding on our opponent's side, so I think this is a particularly strong addition in this seasonal event. And Black Blood is here to remove a card altogether if it gets boosted, and given how there are going to be a lot of our opponents using Vitality, I think this is going to be almost always capable of destroying at least something. Morenn is another card that technically doesn't have any movement, however, she is our only source of luck. So there's a look at the deck, and like I said, the focus is on using units that either boost ourselves or damage our opponents whenever they move, with a few other additions that either boost a lot of our units or damage a lot of our opposing units. So let's test it out. Okay, so we'll go against a fellow Scoia'tael deck here, and we will go first. Okay, and we got a couple Cat Witchers here, plus Dol Blathanna Sentry. That is a good combo, especially with a Dryad Matron as well. Treant Boar, I like that. Let's get rid of the Elven Swordmaster. That's largely just a throwaway card. Black Blood could be a nice way to counter some of their setups. Oneiromancy, great as well. Geralt, Yrden, Matta. Yeah, I think this is a nice combo. We certainly have our fair share of both removal / resetting and our own engines, so I think we can make this work. Okay, and if we're going first here, what do we want to put down first? I think definitely Dol Blathanna Sentry in our range row to boost ourselves, and tempting... I think we do this just to keep you safe. So the tactics will not trigger the momentum effects here, so as you can see, not getting any vitality. That's because that's not a unit. Okay. Interesting. That's just a little bit of boosting at best, and you're not even going to get it here. Bit of a strange card to lead off with. But sure. So now, let's see. We can either go the boosting route, or we can go the damaging route. I think maybe we throw down a Cat Witcher, just in case this round ends a little bit on the earlier side. We can make sure we still hold on to some of our damaging and some of our boosting for a future round, because this is a strange play to lead things off with, and I don't know what to make of it. But now you see, once the units start moving, we'll get the boosting, and we'll get the damage, we'll get the vitality, and we'll get the bleed. Okay, and yeah, that's why I actually wanted to boost the Dol Blathanna Sentry at the beginning, was because Scoia'tael does have a lot of cards that deal 5 damage. So at least we kept you safe, but we're down 1 Cat Witcher. Do we want to follow up with more damage, or instead go with more of our own boosting? And I think, let's try more Cat Witchers here, and we'll get rid of your Wandering Treant here. Okay, Well, this time it's only 3 damage, so the Cat Witcher will stick around. And as you see there, we do not get any bleed from taking the damage from the special card, because again, it's only units that apply that, so we might have a little bit of an advantage if our opponent did not realize that to be the case. And at this stage, I'm thinking we probably do put down a Dryad Matron here, get some more movement going on, and leave it at that. And now we should start to get pretty solid engine, combining some boosting and some damage. My only concern here is that we might potentially overinvest in this round, given how this is a nice combo, and we want to have some of this stuff for a future round. Okay. They opt to go in the range row to spawn the young Dryad, and we don't really know if they actually boosted any cards in their hand. We don't know if they have Devotion or not. Haven't seen any neutral cards yet, but it's certainly a possibility. And at this stage, I'm thinking we probably go Treant Boar. It will gain Zeal, because we do now have a Dryad out there. So let's go that route. And as for who we actually want to hit with that, I think probably just take out the young Dryad. Try to remove as many Symbiosis cards as we can. And the Cat Witcher should also remove you. So now it's just this person whose name I don't know how to pronounce. And yeah, I suspected that this was going to end up being a short round here, because we were starting to run away with it. So we did have to use some pretty solid cards, at least ones that work really well together, but convincing round 1 win here. Okay, and we drew into Pavko, the Matron, and a Golden Froth. Let's dump the Froth, and try to dump the Froth again. Okay, Dol Blathanna Sentry, definitely a good pickup. And so we have 1 card disadvantage here, so in theory, probably looking to play 1 card and then pass. That is a little bit tough in that case to know what card to play, but I think the answer is almost certainly Oneiromancy, then we can get the Echo Copy for round 3. As for what card we play now, though, that is perhaps the better question, and I think we maybe just throw away what is potentially our weakest card and go with something like an Elven Swordmaster, so that way it's a little bit less likely for us to draw into in round 3 when we actually want to be optimizing our hand. So let's go with you. Mostly just to get rid of you. Okay, and Froth is not a bad card here, so we may find them over-investing a bit. Now, they will boost a random allied Treant, but they don't have any Treants out there. They'll get down a Wandering Treant, but, I mean, like I said, we were planning on passing at this stage anyway, because this way we'll draw back up to 10 for round 3, and they have played one of their relatively good cards for a round that we were prepared to just give to them no matter what. Okay, and we drew into, of course, round 2 of Oneiromancy, and we still got our other Elven Swordmaster, so much for getting rid of those. Well, let's dump this one here. Gezras is definitely a great pickup. That is certainly the card we're most looking to get. As with our Oneiromancy, what would we like for that? Either Gaetan, Malena, possibly you, or even Morenn? And we could still try do some switching around here to pick up one of those, although I do like some of our other cards here. Matta does mean that we'll draw our highest provision cost card, which actually, if we check quickly, I think it's Gaetan at 7. Pretty sure it is. Or Royal Decree, which will ultimately get us that. I think we live with this. It is a fair bit of removal, which may or may not be necessary. You know, with things like Black Blood, resetting with Yrden, and banishing with Heatwave. Okay, and this looks like their big setup, perhaps. They're looking to go with a bunch of Harmony, maybe? Although we've seen a ton of Dryads. It does mean that they're going to need to play something other than a Dryad, but how do we want to lead things off here? Usually, I'd say Dol Blathanna Sentry first to set up our movement for more boosting, and then followed by maybe a Matron. Although, do we want to try to do something to remove some of these cards before they get boosted up? Normally, I would say perhaps, but then again, with a Yrden, a Black Blood, and Korathi Heatwave, that may not be urgent, because we have so many ways to remove those cards when we want to, so I think let's lead off with the Dol Blathanna Sentry after all. Okay, and Force Protector will, yes, remove it, in all likelihood. And this time, they actually do have a Treant out there, so it will get boosted. Again, it's not coming from a unit, so it doesn't gain the Vitality, but that is still less than ideal. And at least at the moment, they appear to be boosting up in their range row the most, which of course does help with Yrden, but we have enough movement with our leader ability And with Malena, if we are to get her from our deck, that we can probably set up a pretty effective Yrden either way. But losing the Dol Blathanna Sentry is rough, and I think at this stage, what were we saying we wanted to get with Oneiromancy? Either Gaetan or Malena, or Royal Decree even, but then of course that just gets us another one of those cards. Could potentially just buy some time with Matta, but I think we want to get some movement out there first. The risk here is that this card could potentially get immediately destroyed, because if they have more of those 5 damage special cards, then this could go down here. So we're taking a bit of a risk. We could potentially use some leader ability charges to boost you up a bit, but I want to try to save those if we can to optimize the Yrdens. Okay, and yep, here is one of the cards that we are perhaps going to play next. Getting the Vitality to get boosted, and then get more Vitality, which is why that card is so good in this seasonal event. So now, let's see, we can either start applying the damage with Pavko, and if we put him here, he'll get boosted from the Dryad Matron. Could put down you and focus on boosting ourselves. Why don't we get the boosting going first? I think that might be a little bit more important, because again, we have lots of ways to reduce their strength, but not quite as many ways to boost ourselves up. And now they're going to presumably destroy these Treants, right? And I was wondering if/when they were going to start to play something other than Dryads to trigger their harmonies, and they did do so here. But again, if they're loading up on all the big cards in the range row, that's fine. We just want to make sure that we have enough time to move you into the range row, because they're starting to flood that a bit. But at this stage, Pavko, you could, if we were to play you, destroy a Wandering Treant eventually. But, of course, it will take a turn before we can actually use that ability. I mean, at the moment, there aren't too many cards that are within destruction range, but it may still be worth putting you down next and keep this Matron moving. Okay, now they're going to give themselves Vitality, I assume? But again, this is, in many cases, just a case of too many Dryads here, because that's not going to trigger Harmony, and the Vitality is not great in this seasonal event. You want to be boosting and then getting bonus Vitality. You don't get any bonus Vitality by playing cards that give Vitality. So at this stage, we could play Matta out here, get her boosted by the Matron, and draw our biggest card. It's tempting, although technically speaking, if we can do that when we already have Gezras out there and his Adrenaline 3 triggering, that would be the optimal play. So I think in that case, we probably do go Oneiromancy here. And what would we want Oneiromancy to give us? Well, is it too early? For something like a Malena or a Gaetan? It might be. It might be. So in that case, we could go Black Blood and just remove one of their big cards. Let's give that a try, actually. And let's just use you to destroy this card. Does mean that we're not getting the benefit of the lead to go along with it, but it limits their symbiosis to a certain extent. Okay, now here comes a big Great Oak play. Going for the huge damage. And yes, they are loading up in that range row, and the reason why I wanted to put Black Blood was because they had a big card in the melee row that was getting boosted that we had some concern may not have had room to get moved up into the range row if we waited around. So let's see, we're at 5 cards now, which means we still want to wait one more turn before we go with Gezras. And in that case, I mean, it's looking more and more like we're going to need to go Oneiromancy here, or we could go Heatwave and remove something altogether, although not seeing anything that looks desperate to remove. It looks like all stuff that just is a good candidate for Yrden. So if we are to use something like Oneiromancy, then, I mean, might make sense to get Malena out here, just to make that more effective. If they do play any big cards in the melee row, then we can move them around a bit. Okay. Playing a card from their deck, and oh, it's going to be one that gets boosted for all their special cards. That does make sense. They have played a reasonable amount of those. But there is still room in the range row for us to move it to the range row and then proceed to reset it. That's what Malena's out here for, so we will definitely make that happen. Let's go with Gezras here, and I think we'll focus on playing them in the melee row to boost our own units rather than damage their units in their melee row, because there's only going to be one after we do this. And they certainly have a lot more points than us right now, but we now have at least the beginnings of the setup that we've been waiting to make happen. Okay, now they're gonna Purify and boost by 3. And again, it's a special card, so it will not give Vitality. Although they gain Vitality? What? Was that part of the... That might have been part of the special effects of that card, right? If you control Dryad, gain 3 Vitality. Okay, that's why they got Vitality there. Don't worry. Then, at this stage, I think this is where I want to play Matta, because we now have Gezras' Adrenaline 3 triggering, so he's stronger now, and we can increase the amount of time in which his Adrenaline 3 is triggering by playing Matta now. So let's do this. And we get Royal Decree, which I think will ultimately end up being a Gaetan play. Probably. But now, let's see. I think what we do here is we have all the cards that we want to have for them in the range row. Let's deliberately move Gezras into the melee row so that at the end of our turn, he'll move back to range and boost all these units here. Because that's more so where we're getting the benefit out of him right now. And so our range row is going to start to get pretty big here. We're hoping they don't have a Yrden. Okay, and same idea here. It's really not a huge play, so I'm not so concerned about it, especially when we are going to completely undo that by going with our Yrden. Now, here's the question. What order do we play our last cards here? Yrden, we'd like to have be our last card. In case they have any last-minute boosting they want to do, we can reset all of it. But that would mean Heatwave removing something right now, and I do like how their range row is completely full right now. If they had anything that they wanted to put here, they don't have any space for it. Then that would leave us with Royal Decree, and I was saying Gaetan would be interesting, but that would move all of our cards from the range row into the melee row. And that's not really something we want to do, because we want them in the range row for Gezras to do that boosting. So I think what we do is we go Royal Decree, but instead we'll go Morenn, and we'll put her in the range row to lock anyone that has long-term value still. Yes, the Harmonies, although we're going to end up resetting them anyway. And then let's again move Gezras. That way we can get back to boosting ourselves. And already, the points are starting to level out a bit more here, but again, key question is going to be, do they have a Yrden of their own? In which case, who knows who would have this? Alright, they're going to try to hit Gezras, but he's big enough at this point that it's pretty difficult to take him down. So now we can Heatwave, and they do have a unit in the melee row that is bigger than a 1, at the very least. But that being said, that's still not a great Heatwave target. So I do wonder if maybe we just remove their biggest unit in the range row. Obviously, we would end up resetting Gord. Yeah, what if we actually, for that reason, Heatwave the Great Oak, I think is the one with the highest base power in 7. Does mean they'll have more room in the range row. So it is a bit of a risk. They might end up playing something there, but then of course we'll reset it next turn with Geralt. So let's go back to move in Gezras. I guess we'll bump it around with our leader ability as well. Just as long as we keep him in the melee row, so that at the end of our turn, he'll move back to range and give us that boost. And we still have one charge of leader ability here if necessary. Really? Waited till the last second to play her. Interesting. And he did go with the melee row. But now is when we bring out Geralt. And sorry, buddy. That does always hurt when your opponent has the last second Yrden, and they forfeit. Okay, so we'll go against Northern Realms here, and they will go first. Okay, and we got some Dol Blathanna Sentries, 2 of them. Gaetan, Malena, probably want to dump a Swordmaster. Heatwave for outright removal. Pact, also probably something we want to dump here. Yrden, okay. I do think they're going to have a ton of boosting, because that is what Northern Realms does, so something like Yrden and or Black Blood could be extremely effective. Heatwave as well. Okay, and they're going to go with a Redanian Elite, which I believe will immediately trigger that boost and give it all the vitality to go along with it. That's actually a pretty big point slam. But, of course, we could potentially set up the Yrden, but that's something we'd ideally save for the last round, so let's go and focus on putting up our own points for now, and we'll see where we end up if it feels like Yrden is necessary or not. Okay, and Siege. They're going with the scenario. Okay, I will admit I did not necessarily expect them to do that. I was expecting more of the boosting route, but it appears as though they may actually be going for more the damaging route instead. Now, we could, of course, use movements, possibly our leader ability, to move the Trebuchet into the melee row, in which case it would no longer be able to deal its damage every turn. Malena could do something similar. I would kind of like to get both of our Dol Blathanna Sentries out here first before we focus on doing all the movement, though. So I think maybe what we do here is we do go Dol Blathanna Sentry in the range row, and then bump you. And possibly as soon as next turn, we'll get Malena out here, and then we can focus on using her for the movement after that, and not have to rely on using our leader ability, which obviously has a limit of 3 charges. And, because, yep, I was expecting them to perhaps have some more siege engines where that first one came from. So, let's see. This is the thing. All these cards need to be in the range row. So we can shut them off at least a bit by moving things around here. So let's definitely play Malena now. I would imagine they are probably going to try to trigger this last round on their next turn. And then they'll have Bombardment, which will still deal a lot of damage. So that much is largely unavoidable. But what we can do is make their units that are already out here not so much of a factor. So would we rather move the Battering Ram, or would we rather move the Trebuchet at this point? Trebuchet is more long-term value, whereas the Battering Ram is more so a one-time bigger point play. And given how we'll have Malena use her ability next turn as well, I think we go with the Battering Ram here. And I think we'll pass on Guerilla Tactics here. We'll just take 1 turn of damage from the Trebuchet, because I'd like to save more of those charges if we can. Okay, they actually aren't immediately triggering the last round of their scenario, but they are going with more damage. They're going on the Dol Blathanna Sentry, which does probably make some sense. And let's see. We could go with Morenn to lock if we really wanted to. On either of you, really. That's perhaps a little bit overkill. We could, of course, start going with outright removal with Heatwave. Black Blood would remove their Redanian Elite on their next turn, unless they were to use their leader ability. It's actually a very good counter to Black Blood. If they're paying close attention, then they can deliberately boost whichever card they feel is least helpful to them and get rid of that and save a big Redanian Elite. I don't have any great options here. I think what we do is, why don't we lock one of their damaging units and move the other to the melee row. Okay, and this is more so the type of thing I was expecting to see. Lots of boosting. Okay. And I am tempted to put down the Black Blood now, especially because they just used their Royal Inspiration, so it'll be on cooldown next turn, so they won't be able to just throw this on whatever card they'd like. So they do have the order on the Radovid's Royal Guards that they could use to boost, say, probably the Redanian Archer, but maybe we take that chance and see if they are paying close enough attention to realize that that's an option, because otherwise we could play you, but we don't have quite as much movement as we'd like here outside of, say, Malena, and so we can't get too much boosting happening other than, say, we could play you, use Malena to bump you to a different row, and then start getting your Vitality triggering. That may be worth doing here. The only thing is that that Vitality is about to run out, so I think we do probably try to make a move on this here. And actually not sure we have much reason to move people around other than, say, moving you, just to give you some boost from the Dol Blathanna Sentries. So now we see if they're paying attention. If they don't use this order ability, then we will destroy their Redanian Elite, which is, of course, a 13-point destruction, which is pretty sweet. But they should use this on either their Archer in their melee row or some weak card that they play from their hand. Get some damage out of this card here, and then that will trigger Bombardment, so we're going to take a lot of damage here. And yes, they do boost the Archer, so that was smart. But now I think what we do is, well, we would have liked to have still had Malena out there, because then we could have move to you with Malena, get some boosts from the Dol Blathanna Sentry, and we trigger your special ability as well. But now we'd have to use a leader ability charge to do that, which is less so something that I want to do. That being said, this is not exactly looking like our best round 1 here, so I think we might just prep to take the loss in round 1 here and play our weakest card, which would probably still be you. Otherwise, I mean, if we were to Heatwave and remove 14 power on their side, they'd still be at 25, which is still a lot to try to make up. Even if they pass next turn, we'd have to make all that up in 1 turn, which is probably more than we can do. So yeah, I think we just play you. And we anticipate that we will end up passing on our next turn. Yeah, and they pass. I think we just give them round 1 here. Yrden would be a big play, but it's not enough to single-handedly take this round. And reduce it by 13 there, 1 there, and 3 here. Not enough to catch up, so I think we pass. Okay, we drew into Oneiromancy. That's very nice. Same with Royal Decree, and Dryad Matron is perhaps one of the cards that we would have very much wanted to have in round 1. But this is strong. We just don't have a ton of units here. Then again, with Royal Decree and Oneiromancy, we can certainly make that happen. Matta as well. I think Matta at this stage, to give us our highest provision cost card, would be Gezras. So that's definitely a nice pickup. And that means with other cards, we could do something like pick up Pavko for damage, or even a Cat Witcher. So I think this is just about the best we can do from a hand standpoint, and they'll immediately pass. And that makes some sense. We're on even cards they could have tried playing in round 2, but that means that we'll have to go 1 card down for round 3. I think what we do here is we play Oneiromancy because we'll get the Echoed copy in round 3, and we just want to play our weakest possible card here, probably a Swordmaster, just to get rid of it, because we are just wanting to sneak by with a little bit of points here and save all our best cards for round 3. So we'll go a card down here for round 3, and that's kind of the price we paid for handing them the round 1 victory on even cards. But we're hoping that our combination of Yrden, Gezras will be enough to pull off the round 3 win. Okay, and well, Pact we'd like to dump. Matron is certainly nice, especially when we already have one in our hand. Then you now have much better cards to go along with you, because we can boost you with the Matrons, and we'll end up getting Gezras from any one of these 3 cards. Anything else we'd like to have? I mean, Pavko, the Cat Witchers, to a certain extent, yes. Gezras, of course, but we have so many ways in which to get cards out of our deck that I don't really think it's necessary for us to try to mulligan any of our cards here. So, that being said, how do we want to start? I think the answer is probably getting some Matrons out there and start the movement as soon as we get another card. And they're gonna go with Redanian Knight, which normally is not that inspiring of a card, but in this seasonal event, it does automatically boost itself at the end of every turn, and that does mean that it'll also gain Vitality every turn. Now, it does need to be in the range row. If we really want to, we could move it with Guerilla Tactics. I'd like to save those, and I'm not too concerned if this becomes a really big card, because we do have Yrden. We'd like to have Malena, which of course we played in round 1. That way we can more easily manipulate which row all of their biggest cards are in. But I think we take that chance and save our leader charges for bigger units. So let's get double Dryad Matron going on over here, because then they will swap places with one another, boost each other, and both gain Vitality. And then we'll probably want to play you. And here's another Redanian Knight. Like I said, it does make some sense in this seasonal event. But it does mean they're loading up more on the range row, which of course we are about to end up doing. But let's play you now. And you will get boosted if you have Vitality. And you are about to get both boosts and Vitality. So that should work well. Okay, and Treant Infantry, if you boost it, will deal a lot of damage. And you'll do it with your leader ability, and that doesn't give you Vitality. So that's, comparatively speaking, relatively okay. Now, presumably they're going to put some kind of boosting unit next to it next turn. But this is possibly going to be more so the type of card we might want to remove with a Heatwave, because, sure, we can reset it and reduce some of their strength, but every time it gets boosted, it's going to deal damage, and that we can't reset with Yrden. At least not if we're using the Yrden on them. So, let's see. I'm thinking next, we probably go with Pavko, or I totally forgot about Treant Boar. That's definitely an option as well. That may actually be a little bit preferable here. Well, I think we go Pavko. That's 2 damage every turn. This is 2 damage every other turn. So let's go with you. Ooh, come on. I suppose we gain Zeal. We used the Treant Boar, and we could have used that to remove the armor on one of these guys, stop them from getting boosted. But again, not super concerned about that, given how we're probably going to end up Yrdening the range row. And here is the booster next to the Trident Infantry. So like I said, this may end up being either one of these two. The card that we opt to destroy with the Heatwave, that's tempting. Alternatively, we could move one of them to a different row. Then again, if we destroy one of them, the card that is remaining is probably going to be a card that we're going to want to either reset, or is going to be setting up the cards that we want to reset. So, I think in this occasion, we're going to assume that they have other sources of boosting. I mean, this is Northern Realms, right? So I think we actually might want to Heatwave the Trident Infantry here. And then, let's do this. Now let's go Pavko and start reducing some of the armor on these guys. It's not a huge deal, because like I said, we're probably going to end up Yrdening them anyway, and in truth, that does move you to the melee row, makes it harder to make that happen, but I'm guessing we're going to see a lot more going on in the range row in the future. Okay, and Siege Tower, crew will trigger here, so we'll get boosted and then gain more vitality as well. So again, all the more reason for us to look to reset the range row right now. That means that maybe Pavko, for the time being, we'd actually like to try to get this Redanian Knight down a bit. But next, I think, is to go with Gezras, with either Matta. No, we want Oneiromancy into Gezras. And I think we focus on boosting ourselves by playing you first in the melee row. Then we'll deal the damage to the Redanian Knight. And next turn we'll play Matta, because at this point, Gezras' Adrenaline 3 is triggering, and if we play you next turn, then we're just going to increase the amount of time that that big Adrenaline 3 ability is triggering, so timing is important there. There we see boosting everyone in the range row, so lots of boosting, lots of vitality. Again, does mean that we're actually very susceptible to a Yrden as well. And here is another one of the boosters, and this is why I was thinking we got rid of Trident Infantry, because chances were if we got rid of the Temerian Drummer, they'd find another way to boost it. But, again, we're just going to be looking to reset this row. But let's see. So, now we go Matta. And that means we'll draw into our biggest card, which right now is the Treant Boar. So that's fine. Then we'll damage you. And this bleed may actually have enough time to end up taking you out, at least certainly by the time we apply another damage next turn. Now that was, or technically we should have attacked first and then played Matta, because now we have a non-Scoia'tael unit out there in Matta, and so you're dealing a little bit less damage. But, like I said, this should ultimately be enough, especially once you add on the Gezras damage to take you out. And there's another Trident. Okay, so, yeah, I mean, it is a 4 provision cost card, so they certainly could have more of them, and maybe not the biggest deal to remove it with the Heatwave previously, but we did slow them down a bit, and now this one has far fewer turns to get boosted. So, let's see. At this stage, I think we go Treant Boar, and it will have Zeal, because we certainly do have Dryads out there. Just thinking about how do we want to focus our damage here, because we could even deliberately play you, use a leader ability to move the Trident Infantry back to the melee row, and try to get rid of it there and take it away from their boosters. That's tempting. My only question would be, do we have enough damage to completely get rid of it if we do that? I think we take a chance on it. Because, yeah, we're close already. And we'll get our boost triggering. Okay, in any case, more boosting. It does need to be in the range row. So that could very well end up being a card that we move. Then again, they're going to use all their charges now. Understandably. Okay, and they did use them all on Trident Infantry. Makes sense. So again, a little tough to get rid of it, but it's at least no longer next to these boosters. So, what do we do on this occasion? We either Yrden or we Gaetan. And I think we go with Gaetan here, because Yrden we'd like to save for last. So let's go with you. Let's actually get you into this row first, and let's deal the damage with you first, because you're not going to be able to do it once we move you. But let's go here. Move everybody into the melee row. Deal a bunch of damage, and of course it's the range row, which is what we're going to end up resetting. So it doesn't really make much of a difference here, and then Gezras is just going to boost Gaetan, and only Gaetan, at the end of this turn. It's partially why I wanted to wait to do this last, but could use our leader ability to move some people back. I think we save this to optimize the Yrden on our next turn if necessary. And Lyrian Scytheman is pretty big, but they need to play it on the same row in which they have all the boosts. And they do have Last Say, so this is a little bit concerning here. But I think what we do is we deliberately will move the Treant Boar. We'll try to split our cards a little bit between the melee and range row in case if they have a Yrden, because otherwise that's going to be really dangerous for us. But now, let's see. We could move Trident Infantry back to the range row now. Of course, we did deal some damage to it before. We moved it back to the melee row to take it away from these boosters. That was largely so that it couldn't deal as much damage as it got boosted, but now we can reset everything by putting everything in that range row. I think that is probably the best play here. So let's move you. Then again, it does mean that we're going to deal 2 damage to you in the process, so now there's not really any resetting to do. But now we do this, and we hope that that Yrden is enough. Because, of course, that's our last card, but they still have 2 cards remaining. Oneiromancy, okay, that's a little concerning. If they have Yrden, they're probably going to play it here. Ah, okay. Not a Yrden, but Scorch makes a lot of sense. It's not enough yet for them to pass us. Unfortunately, even though we have already played our last card, Gezras will continue to boost. And yes, even a card down without Last Say, we can still pull it off. So there's a look at a Scoia'tael movement deck for the new Momentum seasonal event. If you liked the video, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.